Hi, my name's Mark. I'm one of the pastors here at Trillium. A guy I knew a long time ago asked me whether I was playing church or being the church. He was talking about me as a minister. Was I leading a church that was playing being church, or was leading a community that was really intending to be the church, the body of Christ? What the New Testament calls the ecclesia, the called out ones. And I think that's always one of the great struggles. Are we kind of going through the sort of the surface level stuff, or are we kind of digging down deep and living out a life that's based on a certain set of principles or relationships? And one of the things we did here at Trillium was on Christmas Day, we actually had a Christmas meal at the church for Trillium and others who are connected with Trillium through relationships. And we had a lovely, simple Christmas meal here, and it's such a beautiful experience. And in the New Testament, it doesn't privilege biological family over spiritual family. There is no privilege that comes out of biology in the connections we have with one another. And I know that most of us know this personally. I mean, you don't have to really like or even love your biological kin. Sometimes you do, and when it happens, it's great. But there's no guarantee in life that's going to work out that way. And there's no expectations, I think, that it has to be that way. And yet we keep forcing those relationships because that's the only family we have. And the church, when it's not playing at it, when it's actually being a church, when it's doing the stuff, it becomes a true family in the way that I think God intended us to be. And one of the neat things about having a Christmas meal at church with my church family, which included some of my biological family, was that there were no expectations. There was no burden on people through my expectations of how it should unfold. It all happened so effortlessly and with so much freedom. So often in our families, we impose our love on people with a certain amount of guilt. Guilt intersects our love. We like to think we love without guilt, but guilt so much is a part of it. And when our family members disappoint us at this time of year, it's so tempting to go back and put the guilt on. And this happened to Sally and I this year when one of our family members disappointed us, and we wanted to get back at them for ruining our expectations and in a sense putting guilt back upon them. And it was so tempting because we were so upset by it. And we just, after a while, we just found a way of letting it go and not seeking retribution or punishment through guilt, and just loving pure and generously. And when you love without guilt, it's scary because you lose control. You lose your ability to control the circumstance. You lose your power, it feels. And I'm struggling in this moment, trying to just love with a total generosity without any guilt or any expectations, so that I can be free. And one of the things I experienced at Trillium One, our Christmas celebrations here, our Christmas meal, was a kind of freedom that I rarely get on Christmas Day. We are called to be the church, which is to love without expectation, and to love without guilt, and to love without control, just to love pure and generously, just to let the light shine. And the world doesn't really get this kind of love. In fact, so much of the world is built on something totally, radically different. We looked at the story of Jesus going off with his family to Egypt because Herod the Great was out to kill him. A little baby born into the world, and already he's got a warrant put on him, a fatwa or whatever you want to call it, put against him, and he's on the executioner's block. And there's Jesus and Joseph and Mary, they're disappearing off to Egypt for safety. And Herod only knows one way of dealing with circumstances, through violence and force. He's even eliminated some of his children, his sons, who were aspiring for the throne because he felt them to be a threat. He was a survivor, and he had one tool in his kit, and it was force and violence. And we see that today in Syria especially, and what it does to people's lives, and the displacement it causes, and millions of people who have no home anymore. God comes into the world to live as one of us, to take on our lives in its fragile nature. That's the celebration of Christmas. And love, love's meant to live in that fragile world. We can't control things. We can't dominate them. We can't guilt our way into getting what we want. It never works. The only solution we have is just to open our hands and our hearts and let the light shine.